In late 1965, the new commanding officer of HMM 364, my squadron, called me to his tent, and he told me that regrettably he was not going to be able to get me any R&R during my tour because I was only going to be in Vietnam about 11 months, whereas the other guys were on a full 13-month tour, and he had a limited number of slots for R&R. So he said, but I will be taking you with the squadron on the Special Landing Force, which leaves here in April. And there was no discussion of whether or not that would happen. It was certain. And I knew the problem. I could see the problem. And this colonel was a really good officer, and I knew he was correct. But I saw an opportunity for just that moment, for a quid pro quo. And so I asked him that if, when we are back from the Special Landing Force, which is 3 months away from Vietnam, if in a day where there's no flight activity or very little flight activity, sir, could I take 2 planes and go up to Marble Mountain for my R&R just one night? So Marble Mountain was all helicopters, and it was a complete air group, and maybe in addition, maybe as much as fragmentary groups, other composite squadrons that were operating there. It was a bigger operation than Key Ha, my base. And it was been there for a longer time, and they'd had the time to actually build up their facilities, as in nice beds, better, more weatherproof housing, and a really classy officers club. Our officers club was a giant tent with a dirt floor. It sounds crazy, but in my mind, getting just one day to go there and hang out and see all the guys that were our friends from flight school or the East Coast was a great breakout. And as ridiculous as it sounds, after he looked bewildered for a minute and realized that it couldn't happen, it would never happen, but he agreed to it. So we went on. We did go on the Special Landing Force, and we had all kinds of different battles. We were in all different operations, and I'm back from, on July 4th, we were back from the Special Landing Force. And in my mind, I'm recreating what would be my one-day R&R. And I was of the same mind when I was talking to my lieutenant colonel commanding officer, who is still our CO, that I'll keep a lookout. And so one morning I'm coming out of the dining hall about 8 o'clock, and I see that nearly all of our birds are on the air, are parked and not out flying. So I let an hour go by, and I see that nearly all of the planes are inactive. So I walk down to the operations area, and I find out that they don't have any fragmentary orders to do anything that day. There's no operations in effect. We didn't even have to send a plane out on SAR. It was not anything going on. So I run back up to the colonel's tent and ask him if this is the day. And as crazy as it sounds, his face looked ruined for a second. He called down there, had his phone set up to call to the operations duty officer, and he confirmed that nothing was going on. So he said, "Sure, George, go ahead." I ran down to the officers' quarters and recruited 3 other pilots that I'd like to party with and fly with, that I knew could fly really well, and said, come on now, we've got a flight. So they, not knowing what all we were going to do, we went down to the planes, and I was the section leader. We had 2 planes. And I didn't have a moment to even tell them exactly what we were doing. And we flew unmolested up north to Marble Mountain. And I may have told Tom, who was my co-pilot, that he sort of what we're doing, but it's so unbelievable that he may have just rejected it. But he had a smile on his face, and I was good. We checked into the officers' quarters at Marble Mountain, found 4 beds unused, and we bogarted them with our little bag that we tossed on there. And this was middle of the day, and about 3 o'clock, Tom and I went over to the officers' club. The other crew had stayed at the flight line, rolling dice with whoever was there to lose their money or take Scotty's money. So Tom and I were at the officers' club, and we're having a great time, jukebox playing, beer flowing. We were seeing guys, the pilots that we'd known in flight school and around in the club, and it was really a wonderful time. So we were going to stay there until they closed about 9 o'clock, but about 6 p.m., the duty officer comes in and tells us we have to evacuate to the bunker because the VC have been mortaring the airfield. And everybody left except Tom and I, because we decided that we could probably live through this nicely because all the mortars were going onto the airfield and to the airplanes. So we're there. I got up, plugged the jukebox back in, and liberated a couple of brews, and we stayed there until the duty officer came back by and gave us the all clear. And we decamped about 8:30 that evening and slept, had a good night's sleep, got back in the 2 airplanes the next day and flew back to Keehaw. But I did notice when I got to the airbase in the morning that the mortars had exploded all over that base, and one of the shells had created chunks of shrapnel that pierced the skin of my aircraft and the windscreen on the right side and the front windscreen, chunks and holes in it. And I could imagine what those chunks of shrapnel and glass would do to my puny body. But we got back to Keehaw and parked the airplanes and went back about our business, and never was anything said.